Okay, here we go. We are live on Facebook. Back to Zoom. So, good to see everybody. Just adjusting a few final things here. Go around that. Okay. And put myself on. There we go. All right. Good to see everybody. And today is actually a special day in the Vaishnav calendar. It is the Disappearance Day commemoration of the Disappearance Day of Srila Rupa Goswami. It's the commemoration of the Disappearance Day of Gauridas Pandit. And it's the day after Ekadashi. So I hope you all had a very nice Ekadashi and chanted more japa and fasted appropriately. So I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today. I think we'll just go to the Bhagavadgita. I was going to do something nectarian, but we wanted to. Actually, Bhagavadgita is nectarian. What am I talking about? I was going to talk about the Lalita Madhava, Rupa Goswami's play, but I think it's better. Let me think about it. It's probably better to go to the Bhagavadgita because we're progressing very quickly with the Bhagavadgita, and we're on the 10th chapter of the Bhagavadgita. So anyway. So Rupa Goswami and Gauridas Pandit. Gauridas Pandit, just one thing about Gauridas Pandit, if you're interested in Rupa Goswami, you can look at our class that we gave this morning, and we're going to be posting that in YouTube in a few minutes after we give this class, because the class is broken up due to an internet glitch, but I have both portions of it. Okay, so let's do Gita tonight, because we're on the 10th chapter, which is a very exciting chapter, the Gita, the opulence of the Absolute. So first we'll chant Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Balagamba Giribadadhari Gopi Jana Balaba Giribadadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Malabha Giri Badadhari Gopi Jana Balagova Giri Badadhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Olsatata Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Mar Shila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. Namacharya Srila Hridas Thakur ki jai. Ram say Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadwaita Garadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Vrindavanam ki jai, Mathuram ki jai, Jagannath Swami ki jai, Munamai ki jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi ki jai, Go Premananda, Hari Hari Bo. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. So Om Ganati Miranda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chakturam Medidam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay, so we'll continue with our Gita class, our Gita study. And so we're on the 10th chapter, which is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. And we're going to continue with text number 6. We did 4 and 5 yesterday. And we're getting very close to the nutshell verses. The nutshell verses are 8, 9, 10, and 11. What I mean by nutshell verses are these 4 verses are actually the very essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Very, very important verses. 8, 9, 10, and 11 in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, let me open up the screen a little bit. Okay. So, we are on text 6. Here we go. Maharshaya sapta purve chatvaro maniyas manavastata madbhava manasa jatta yesham loka ima praja. Maharishya, the great sages, Sapta 7, Purve, before, Chatvaraha, 4, Manavaha, Manus, Tata, also, Matbhava, born of me, Manasaha, from the mind, Jataha, born, Yesham, of them, Loke, in the world, Ima, all this, Prajaha, population. The 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages, and the Manus, the progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind, and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. So, in other words, the Lord, that is Krishna, in his form is Vishnu, can create with any part of his body, and he has no need for his wife to do that. So many personalities come, like the 7 great sages and others, come just from Krishna's mind. Wow. And even personalities such as Lord Brahma can emanate living entities from different parts of his body, like from the middle of his forehead. When he got angry, the Rudras came, the 11 Rudras, and they were pretty angry. So he got them married, and they weren't so angry anymore with the Rudranis. So anyway, so even the higher living entities in different planets can create children from their minds or from other means. So Krishna does that. And so the living entities that Krishna created, especially the first living entity in this, spots in my computer, the first living entity in this universe, Lord Brahma, was actually created from Krishna's navel, umbilical cord. This umbilical cord coming from Krishna is actually a lotus stem, and in the lotus stem, there are all the various planetary systems, and then from the lotus flower, Lord Brahma was born, and there was no need of Lakshmi or any other person to help him create Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma was born full grown, no baby Brahma, just full grown Brahma. So Krishna can do anything he wants. That's the point. So, in other words, everything comes from Krishna. All people come from Krishna. This is a pretty simple verse to understand. The Lord is giving a genealogical synopsis of the universal population. Brahma, which as I just mentioned, is the original creature born out of the energy of the Supreme Lord, who is known as Haranyagarbha. That means golden womb. So out of Krishna's womb, so to speak, or the navel, Lord Brahma is born. And from Brahma, all the 7 great sages, and before them, 4 other great sages, namely Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar, and the 14 Manus we mentioned. I think we mentioned before that in each day of Lord Brahma there's 14 Manus. Manus are the people in charge of a particular period. That period is called Manvantara, and they take turns, that's all, are manifested. All these 25 great sages are known as the patriarchs of the living entities all over the universe. Just like in the Bible, you have Abraham, who is one of the patriarchs. And it's interesting, Abraham, it's a very similar word. Hey, Brahma, Variham. They are, I don't know what the connection is, but there appears to be a connection. There are innumerable universes and innumerable planets within each universe, and each planet is full of population of different varieties. All of them are born of these 25 patriarchs. These are also called Prajapatis. Prajapatis means those who have a lot of kids, or who are the original fathers from whom everybody descends, Prajapati. Brahma underwent penance for 1,000 years of the demigods before he realized by the grace of Krishna how to create. Then from Brahma came Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar. Incidentally, Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar were not Prajapatis. Even though they're included in this list of great sages, they did not have any kids. In fact, interestingly enough, they remained as kids. 5-year-old kids, but quite educated. Most 5-year-old kids are not educated, but they remained as 5-year-old kids. And the reason they remained as 5-year-old kids is because of their determination never to engage in any sort of sense gratification. Even their father at one point, Lord Brahma, asked them to get married. And Lord Brahma said, it's time to get married, boys. You're 5 years old, a little early. But anyway, he said, it's time to get married, or at least plan out your marriage. They said, no, Dad, we are not doing it. We got other things to do. We're philosophers. And Lord Brahma got so angry that, not that steam came from his ears, but Lord Shiva, in his Rudra incarnation, as we mentioned before, the 11 Rudras appeared from his forehead. And those 11 Rudras, they were angry because they were a manifestation of his anger. And I mentioned this before a few seconds ago, he had to arrange for them to get married just to be peaceful. Okay. And actually, Prabhupada here says the 4 Kumaras, and then Rudra, and then the 7 great sages, and in this way all the Brahmins and Kshatriyas are born out of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma is known as Pitamaha, that means grandpa, the grandfather. And Krishna is known as Pita, Prapitamaha, that means the father of grandfather, or great-grandfather. That is stated in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 1139. So Krishna is the father of everyone, and he is the father of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the father of these Prajapatis. except for the 4 Kumaras who didn't want anything to do with Prajapati. And then we're just descendants of them. We do some genealogy. Actually, if you examine our genes, and all the living entities proceeded from the same source. That's why there's similar genetic structures in each and every living entity, because we all came from the same source. And it's not that we descended from a common ancestor to monkeys, which is what Darwin says. Darwin doesn't say we came from monkeys. Darwin says that there was a common ancestor from whom monkeys came and we came. Of course, that common ancestor, you may say, well, that's Lord Brahma, all the way back. So in one sense, you may say he's right, but not in the way that he intended. Because evolution does not occur. I got news for you. One species does not evolve to another species due to mutations. There are so many scientific, mathematical books written about this, how mutations are invariably harmful. You lose some particular faculty in the body. There's no new organs that come about through mutations. I mean, you may end up with 2 heads or something like that. It's really, having 2 heads is not a good idea for human beings, because you probably won't reproduce, and that mutation, whatever mutation it was, is going to be lost, and plus it's a recessive mutation. I'm not going to explain what that means instead of dominant. Because it would be pretty hard to find a girl with 2 heads. So you could pass on that particular mutation. Wanted, girl with 2 heads. Pretty hard. Anyway, not going to be too humorous about this. So next verse is Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama dyo veti tatvataha. So vikalpena yogena yujate natra samshaya. Etam, all this, vibhutim, opulence, yoga, mystic power, cha, also, mama, of mine, ya, anyone who, veti, knows, tatvataha, factually, saha, he. Avikalpena, without division, yogena, the devotional service, yujate is engaged, na, never, atra, here, samsheha, doubt. So one who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. You know, if you're not convinced yet, here we go later in the chapter to convince you. Now, one interesting thing I heard about mystic power, Prabhupada was, he was in Rishikesh, and he was approached by some man, and the man said, please show me some mystic power. Show me some mystic power and I'll be convinced. And then Prabhupada turned around and said, look at all these boys and girls. Previously, they were hippies or whatever. And look at them now. They had no exposure to Krishna consciousness before, and now they are Brahmins. So if that's not a mystic power, I don't know what is. So purport, the highest summit of spiritual perfection is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulences of the Supreme Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. In other words, in the beginning, you have to be overwhelmed with how God is great. Prabhupada said, generally people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. So you have to know how God is great. You say, God is great, God is great. What does it mean? So you get into some details, convinces you, overwhelms you, and then you say, well, I guess I should worship him. If one factually knows how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of the Supreme, there's no alternative but to surrender to him, at least out of fear. Whew. Knowing that he's everything, in charge of everything, aware of everything, he's your well-wisher, and knowing about the laws of karma, I better surrender. Actually, I got an interesting letter from someone. He's not actually an initiated disciple. He's in Fiji, actually. And he said, I have to admit, I've gone back to eating meat. He's not a disciple. Don't worry. So I'm ready to send him a letter. Not, please don't do that, Prabhu. But because in the Fiji Indian culture they respect fear a lot, I'm going to say, if you don't stop it, Krishna is going to punish you in such a way that you will never forget. Woo! And so out of fear, he'll stop eating meat. In different cultures, people function according to fear, according to awards. Also in Fiji, it's like that too. You could say, if you stop eating meat, you'll be rewarded, and Krishna will give you, which is true. We're not actually making these things up. But you have to explain things to people according to the context, according to who they are. So it's really important to understand who it is, who you're talking to, what their culture is, and what they're going to understand. Because if I told them, if you eat meat, you'll never understand Krishna, it's like, okay, life is like that. It just won't strike him, so it has to be either a heavy reward or a heavy punishment. Give up eating meat, or if you eat meat, you will definitely be a chicken in your next life, because it doesn't eat cow flesh. So if you really want to be a chicken and suffer and be killed and strangled to death yourself, go ahead, buddy. And that will actually strike fear of God into him. So sometimes it's necessary for people to know how God is great, just so they're afraid. Like that. I mean, it's interesting. People surrender or come to God because they're afraid. Of course, that's not actual surrender. That's just, let's say, a beginning or a step. This factual knowledge can be known from the descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-gita and similar literatures. In the administration of this universe, there are many demigods distributed throughout the planetary system or systems, and the chief of them are Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the four great Kumaras and other patriarchs. And as I explained before, the four great Kumaras are not really patriarchs in that sense. There may be patriarchs in the sense of being spiritual fathers or grandfathers or whatever. I mean, I guess in a larger spiritual sense, but not in the actual physical, bodily sense. There are many forefathers of the population of the universe, and all of them are born of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, in his various expansions. It is not that Krishna directly does that in his original aspect. Krishna expands himself as the Garabodakshai Vishnu, that is the second expansion of the Mahavishnu, in order to create all these living entities. So when we say Krishna, it's not Krishna's original aspect. It's not that Krishna plays his flute, and out of Krishna comes Lord Brahma and all these other little entities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the original forefather of all forefathers. These are some of the opulences of the Supreme Lord. When one is firmly convinced of them, he accepts Krishna with great faith and without any doubt, and he engages in devotional service. All this particular knowledge is required in order to increase one's interest in the loving devotional service of the Lord. So you got two things happening here. The being overawed by Krishna and all of his opulences, and then you have to transform that into love. And that's a big step, because it's one thing to be awed with someone's power. It's another thing to love him. But the awe and reverence has to be transformed into love. Now, how do you transform it? Well, first of all, you understand he's so great, he's so amazing, incredible, powerful, etc., like that. And then that means I better listen to him. And then you listen to him, you chant his name, and then you can enter into the higher understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should not, all this particular knowledge is required in order to increase one's interest in the loving devotional service of the Lord. One should not neglect to understand fully how great Krishna is, for by knowing the greatness of Krishna, one will be able to be fixed in sincere devotional service. In other words, in the beginning, yes, we need that gyan, Krishna is God, We have to do the right thing. There's karma. Ooh, careful of the karma. And there's liberation. Got to get out of the material world and all those things. But at the end, one is so much in love with God that the greatness or opulence is insignificant. But the stage we're at right now, we better be impressed. We better be impressed by Krishna. There's different stages. Like the pure devotees in Vrindavan, they're generally not thinking Krishna is God. It would just get in the way of their loving relationship. They're thinking Krishna, he's our friend. He's our boyfriend. He is our son. He is my master. I love him. Like that. And that's pure love. It's just like a girl may fall in love with someone who's very rich. Just because he's rich, that's an opulence. They may fall in love with him. Actually, if you're rich, you have no problem finding a wife or husband. It's extremely easy. Even if you're ugly, it's sin. So anyway, someone may approach them, but then they fall in love after a while, hopefully. Or they may kill the person and take all the money, but that's another subject matter. Okay, now we get to the first of the nutshell verses. That means we learn these 4 verses, we know the whole Bhagavad Gita basically. So, aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Aham, I, sarvasya, of all, prabhavaha, the source of generation, mataha, from me, sarvam, everything, pravartate, emanates, iti, thus, matva, knowing, vajante, become devoted, mam, unto me, buddha, the learned, bhava, samanvitaha, with great attention. I, this is Krishna, of course, am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know perfectly know this, engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So let me explain what Krishna means by everything emanates from me. It doesn't mean when things emanate from Krishna, Krishna is lesser for it. Because as we hear in the Upanishad, Om Purnam Purnamidam, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfect. He's complete. And he has all these emanations, and he doesn't become less because of these emanations. These emanations are perfect and complete units into themselves. And he remains perfect and complete. It's like someone who gives money in charity, and that money he gives in charity is used for the proper cause, and he keeps the money in his bank account at the same time. Wow. So that's Krishna. So Krishna is everything, the source of everything. That's what it means to say that God is everything. He's the source of everything, and the energy emanates from him. Okay. We discussed previously about Krishna's different energies, the material energy, spiritual energy, and the jiva soul. And all these energies are his first-class servants. They come from him. They're created by him. And when we say created by him, that doesn't mean they were created at a particular time. They're actually part of him in a very real sense. Whenever we use the word creation, it doesn't necessarily refer to something that happened at a particular time. The soul was never created. Yet, in one sense, we could say we were created by God, but actually we were never created by God because no one has created us. We're eternally coexistent with the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada explains here, this first of the nutshell verses, a learned scholar who has studied the Vedas perfectly and has information from authorities like Lord Chaitanya and who knows how to apply these teachings can understand that Krishna is the origin of everything in both material and spiritual worlds. And because he knows this perfectly, he becomes firmly fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. He can never be deviated by any amount of nonsensical commentaries or by fools. All Vedic literature agrees that Krishna is the source of Brahma, Shiva, and all the demigods. In the Atharva Veda, Gopal Tapani Upanishad 124, it is said, Yo Abramanam Vidati Purvam Yo Vai Vedangscha Ka Payati Sma Krishna. It was Krishna who in the beginning instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge and disseminated Vedic knowledge in the past. Then again in the Narayana Upanishad, 1, Ata Purusho Havai Havai Narayana Kamya Kamayata Kata Shayati Shrjayati. Then the Supreme Personality Narayan desired to create living entities. The Upanishad continues, Narayana Brahmajayate Narayana Prajapatagi Prajayate Narayana Indro Jayate Narayana Astau Vasavo Jayante Narayana Ekadasha Rujajayante Narayana Dvadasadityaha. From Narayana, Brahma is born. From Narayana, the patriarchs are born, also born. From Narayana, Indra is born. From Narayana, the 8 Vasus are born. From Narayana, the 11 Rudras are born. From Narayana, the 12 Adityas are born. This Narayana is an expansion of Krishna. In other words, the same as Krishna, just acting in a different capacity. It's interesting. Today we are actually talking about people with multiple personalities. There's this disorder called the MPD, multiple personality disorder, where you actually have people with a variety of different personalities that are vastly different from each other. And so I think it's not normal to have that disorder, but it's also normal for us to exhibit different facets of our personalities in different circumstances. You know, sometimes I'll take the personality of guru when just dealing with disciples, and which means they don't listen to me. But anyway, so sometimes we'll take the position of guru in dealing with disciples, and other times we'll take the position of a godbrother in dealing with godbrothers, and other times we'll take the position of a son when dealing with my mother. I can't say to my mother, I'm your guru, you have to listen to me, although I'd like to do that. So the same person, and we've sort of integrated all these different aspects of our personality into one person. I'm able to shift gears pretty easily and usually recognize where I am and who I'm dealing with. So a multiple personality person is not able to integrate all these different personalities, usually because of past trauma. Anyway, getting back to Krishna, Krishna is like not someone with multiple personality disorder. Krishna is like a person, but with unlimited facets of his personality. Sometimes the description is given of a Vaidurya stone, which wherever or however you look at it, it looks different. I mean, what I experienced when I was young, I would take the crystals off of my mother's crystal chandelier, she loved it, and just turn it around. And every facet or every angle of vision or every way that the light was refracted inside the crystal was a different experience, but it was the same crystal. So Krishna is like that too. Anyway, that's another explanation of how the same person, Krishna, can act in different capacities and look differently in different situations. It is said in the same Vedas, Brahmanyo Devaki Putraha, the son of Devaki, Krishna is the Supreme Personality. That's from the Narayana Upanishad, number 4. Then it is said, Eko Vai Narayana Asin Na Brahma Na Ishano Napi Nakni Samo Neme Dva Vapri Na Nakshatrani Nasuriyaha. In the beginning of the creation, there was only the Supreme Personality of God in Narayan. There was no Brahma, no Shiva, no water, no fire, no moon, no stars. In the sky, no sun. That's from the Maha-Upanishad, number 1. In the Maha-Upanishad, it is also said that Lord Shiva was born from the forehead of the Supreme One. We mentioned that before. That was the Rudra incarnation. Thus the Vedas say that it's the Supreme Lord, the creator of Brahman Shiva, who is to be worshipped. Also, the first of the nutshell verses in the Bhagavatam says pretty much the same thing. Aham evasame vagre nanyad sadasatram asjaraham yaditasjat yo vishesheta shoshmyaham. Before the creation there was I, during the creation there was I, and after the creation was I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Moksha, so Krishna says this in various literatures. In the Moksha Dharma, Krishna also says, Prajapatim cha rudram chap yaham eva shujami vai. Tau ma himam na janito mama maya vimohitao. The patriarchs, Shiva and others, are created by me, though they do not know that they are created by me because they are deluded by my illusory energy. In the Varaha Purana it is also said, Narayana paro devas tasmas jatas chaturmukaha tasmad rudro bhavad deva satcha sarva gatam gataha. Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From him Brahma was born, and from whom Shiva was born. So Prabhupada is bringing all these quotes out to verify what Krishna is saying in the Gita. So this is what a lawyer does. You know, you have one quote from some law, and if you can bring a whole bunch of other quotes, you've won the case. In other words, he's proving that the Vedas say that Krishna is the source of everything. Krishna in his expansion as Narayan. Lord Krishna is the source of all generations, and he is called the most efficient cause of everything. Efficient means the thing or the person who causes everything to move or to become variegated. As we mentioned before, there's two causes of the material creation. There's the efficient cause and the material cause. Material cause means just the materials, like a piece of clay. Efficient cause means the person who actually shapes the clay, shapes the gross matter, which is called pradhana. So I think that's pretty easy to understand. Efficient cause and material cause. And Krishna is both causes. He says, because everything is born of me, I am the original source of all. Everything is under me, no one is above me. There is no supreme controller other than Krishna. One who understands Krishna in such a way from a bona fide spiritual master with references from Vedic literature engages all his energy in Krishna consciousness and becomes a truly learned man. In comparison to him, all others who do not know Krishna properly are but fools, mudhas. Only a fool would consider Krishna to be an ordinary man. A Krishna-conscious person should not be bewildered by fools. He should avoid all unauthorized commentaries and interpretations on Bhagavadgita and proceed in Krishna consciousness with determination and firmness. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. The second of the nutshell verses. Okay, so this is what the devotees do once they've understood that Krishna is everything. Because once you understand that, you've got nothing else to talk about but Krishna and serving Krishna. So, wonderful verse. Of course, all the verses are wonderful. Machata madgata prana bodhyanta parasparam katyantash jamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. What do the devotees do? All right, let's read the word by word translations. Machata, their minds fully engaged in me. Madgata prana, their lives devoted to me. It's really a beautiful word. Prana means like their life air, basically. Their life breath. Mat means mind. Gata, the goal. Their life breath is just like given to me. I'm their goal. I'm everything to them. Bodhyanta, they are pariching, or sharing. Parasparam, amongst themselves. Katyanta, talking. Kata means speech. Cha also, mam, about me. Nityam, perpetually. Tushanti, and in this way they become pleased. Cha also. Ramanti, in this way they enjoy transcendental bliss. Cha also do that. Translation. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Wow. What a life. That's the best life. Pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. In other words, even if they try to think of something else other than Krishna, the mind just doesn't go there. Just like sometimes, I'm not going to say all of you, but sometimes someone is materially absorbed. They try to think of Krishna, and the mind just goes back to the material absorption. That's all. They try. I can't think of Krishna. Oh, goes back. Think of my society, friendship, and love. I think of my family. I think of my whatever. I just can't keep my mind on Krishna. My mind just grabbed it, thinking my girlfriend, my boyfriend. Can't keep my mind on Krishna. But a Krishna conscious devotee is like, I can't keep my mind on Maya. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotees are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. So actually, an interesting thing is by the influence of the internet, if someone puts something on the internet about Krishna, he can be 24 hours engaged in presenting Krishna consciousness to others, even though they may be in Maya at other times. Anyway, in the preliminaries, this is just a joke. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself, and in the mature stage, they are actually situated in love of God. I got to explain that one. In the beginning, because we know the service to Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Let's say you're giving some bona fide service like cooking for Krishna or gardening for Krishna, and that service is non-different, and there's like a transcendental relish, pleasure, just in meditating on that service for Krishna. And then after a while, yes, you still have that transcendental relish, but then you just relish the understanding of your relationship to Krishna. In the beginning, it's only the activities you're doing for Krishna, and at the end, it's the activities and your internal relationship. One of 5 different rasas, servitude, friendship, parental servitude. Awe and reverence, servitude, parental relationship, friendship, and conjugal relationship. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode. In other words, the perfection and the relish that they're getting is by thinking of Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world and entering into those pastimes. That's the point. In the beginning, again, attachment to the activity. In the end, attachment to the activities and attachment to the pastimes and thinking of the pastimes of Krishna. And just like being able to barely maintain yourself in this material world because you're in so much bliss. When you're having fun, you actually forget to eat. You forget to sleep. And you don't want to sleep when you're having fun. Just like a little kid out playing with his friends. I remember in the old days, people used to play with their friends outside, baseball and different things like that. And when their parents would call them in to eat, they didn't hear their parents. So if one is absorbed in Krishna having a good time, Maya calls you in to, of course, not just eat, just to be her friend, and then you don't hear her. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of the seed in the heart of the living entity. This is his typical example. Brahmanda Brahmate Karma Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasadi Paripati Bish. That the living entity has this creeper of devotion. Remember how we talked about people have the seed of karma? The karma beej, that's a seed, beej means seed. So people also have bhakti beej, or bhakti lata beej, means the seed of the creeper of devotion. So in the beginning, you just have to keep watering. Watering is done by hearing and chanting about Krishna. And then the seed sprouts and goes all the way up, and the fruits are love of God, enters into the spiritual world, and we become ecstatic. This is a good metaphor. There are innumerable living entities traveling throughout the different planets in the universe, and out of them there are few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. That's the verse I just quoted from Manda Brahmataye. Konda Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhari Bhakti Ladavish. That the living entity is wandering all over the universe, or universes, and by the mercy of Krishna, he comes in contact with a great devotee, pure devotee, and he gets the seed of devotion, and it grows and grows and grows, and he becomes completely happy. Because we want to be happy. I mean, isn't it? We just want to be happy. And we've tried so many other things to be happy, and we get frustrated. That's why Krishna sent us Guru, because we were frustrated in our attempt for happiness. We tried, and we tried, and we tried. Like that song goes. Some of you may be aware of it. You can't get no satisfaction, but I tried, and I tried, and I tried. That's a fact. Or, another song, we mentioned this song the other day, does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? That's another song. In other words, or as Prahlad Maharaj says, Purnak Purnas Charvita Charvananam, chewing the already chewed. Or as Prabhupada gives the example, giving many different examples, you take some sugar cane that has been chewed on, because in India they would chew on a piece of sugar cane, it's a nice little candy like that. But after you've chewed on it, and chewed on it, and chewed on it, you spit it out, because it has no more juice in it. So it's like that when we keep trying things. Oh, let me try this. I really look forward to this. I want to try this. I want to try that. That can give me happiness. That can give me happiness. Maybe next time it will give me happiness. Let me just try this. There's one thing I haven't tried. I haven't tried bungee jumping yet. I haven't tried hang gliding. I haven't tried... There's a lot of things you haven't tried in this lifetime. You tried them in previous lives, believe me. So you're thinking, I haven't tried it. I lost this opportunity. Here I am, 70 years old, and too late. Too late. But we tried all these things, and the chewing gum has lost its flavor because it's chewed out. Punak punas charvita charva. Not when it's chewed, we already chewed. This devotional service is just like a seed. So in other words, when one gets frustrated, at a certain point in this world, one says, Krishna! And then next thing you know, Guru is knocking on the door. Hello, I've been sent by Krishna. Is this the right address? So, and if it's sown in the heart of the living entity, and if he goes on hearing chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That seed fructifies just as the seed of a tree fructifies with regular watering. The spiritual plant of devotional service gradually grows, exactly what I talked about before. It grows and grows until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and enters into the Brahmajyoti effulgence in the spiritual sky. That's not so great. In the spiritual sky, though, that plant grows more and more until it reaches the highest planet, which is Goloka Vrindavan, the supreme planet of Krishna. Ultimately, the plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and rests there. Gradually, as a plant grows fruits and flowers, that plant of devotional service also produces fruits, and the watering process in the form of hearing and chanting goes on. In other words, in the spiritual world, we hear and chant out of ecstasy every time we say the word Krishna, like Golokera, not Goloka, Goranga Balite Habi Pulaka Shavit. Every time I say Goranga, when will that day come and I will feel shivering. So pure devotees are like that. Every time they hear the Krishna's name, they just start shivering. I remember yesterday, I'm not saying I'm a great devotee or anything. Yesterday was Ekadashi. So I was chanting more rounds than usual. Didn't quite make 64, I made 32 because I had a lot of people talking during the day. And at one point I just sat down and chanting, looking at the picture of Radha Golokana and feeling just so happy in this world. So happy and satisfied. Tushanti cha, ramanti cha. Anyway. I'm not saying I fainted and rolled on the ground or anything like that, but it was a wonderful experience. And you see this reciprocation with Krishna. I was just talking to a devotee today, and the devotee was telling me that when he or she, I'm not going to give any hints, looks at the deities, you could see the expression in there. The deity is actually expressing something to the devotees, and each and every devotee sees the deities in a different way, because Krishna has an individual relationship with each and every devotee. The plant of devotional service is fully described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the Madhya chapter 19, it is explained there that when the complete plant takes shelter in the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, one becomes fully absorbed in the love of God. Then he cannot live even for a moment without being in contact with the Supreme Lord, just as a fish cannot live without water. I mean, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else but in the association of devotees. In such a state, the devotee actually attains the transcendental qualities in contact with the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of such narrations about the relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees, as stated in the Bhagavatam itself, 12th canto, 13th chapter, text 18. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Vaishnavanam Priyam. So that basically means that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the pure book of Purana. Purana means like an old book that describes many different topics. And it is very dear, Vaishnavanam, amongst the Vaishnavas, Priyam, very dear to the Vaishnavas. In this narration, there's nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Even when sense gratification or liberation are actually portrayed there, they're portrayed in a way that one is encouraged to give them up. Because sometimes you'll find someone like was engaged in sense gratification, and then he realizes it ain't the path. Just like there was the king Yayati who got in trouble because he engaged in sense gratification, and then he got cursed to be really old. And then he wanted his son to give him his youth, finally one of the sons gave him his youth. He became young again and got really frustrated and gave it all up ultimately. So Bhagavatam doesn't encourage these things. Even when it describes these things to a certain extent, it describes them in such a way so you get the message. That's really not where it's at. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. It's like spontaneous. I mean, nobody has to train up a young girl and a young boy to take pleasure in association. They spend hours and hours and hours and hours texting and on the phone and on WhatsApp and on, what else? Facebook or whatever it is, communicating with each other. It's amazing how many hours, and they don't get tired. They get pleasure. Of course, material pleasure, but it's life. Life in the material world. So tomorrow we'll start with text 10. Which is a very reassuring text in which Krishna tells us, he's going to help us quite a bit if we take his hint, or the hint that he has given us. So now we will take some questions from all you nice folks out there. Let me just allow you to ask questions. Okay, you're officially allowed to ask questions now. Who has, let some new people haven't asked questions for a while. Ask questions. Who has a question to ask? Da, 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 da. Who here is not frustrated with the material world? Who still thinks that there is some hope? Let me try again. You want to try again. So if at first... as they say, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Well, according to the Serenity Prayer, that actually insanity is to think by doing the same thing you'll get a different result. And that was spoken by the great pure devotee Albert Einstein. It's just hope against hope. It's somehow or other, I tried this a million times before. I had so many boyfriends, so many girlfriends, so many this, so many that. But this one time it's going to work. I am perfectly convinced that this is it. This is it. It's going to work this time. I mean, the details weren't right last time. Now, wow. And then, it didn't work that time? Say this time? All right. There's a little period of depression, when it doesn't work the second time. Then the third time. And the fourth time. There's depression in between the times you try. And a little bit of renunciation is there. Just like Chitraketu. Let's talk about Chitraketu, my friend. Chitraketu, in the Bhagavatam, it's described, he really wanted a son. This is like our typical situation. He really wanted a son. Okay, wants a son, no problem. And so he tries. His wife can't really have children. Okay. Maybe another wife would be good. Okay. Second wife. Okay. Didn't work. Third wife. Didn't work. Fourth wife. Didn't work. Fifth wife. Didn't work. Okay. So he goes, Bhagavatam describes like 10 million wives. I think that's a hyperbole, an exaggeration. But in any case, there were a lot of them. So, all right, so he keeps trying. Oh, I need the happiness of a son. I need the happiness of a son. He's thinking, this is going to solve all my problems. So finally, he gets the benediction from a great sage, Parvata Muni, who says, okay, because the sage comes, and he's just like so desperate to have a son. He can't live without a son. He thinks that's going to make his life perfect. Okay. So the sage comes, and the sage says, "How are you doing, King O?" And he says, "I'm doing bad. I am depressed. I really want a son." The sage knows you're not really supposed to have a son. So the sage, after the guy keeps insisting, Chitraketu keeps insisting, all right, you can have a son. I'm going to bless you. You have a son. He's going to be a source of happiness and distress. Harsha Shoka, which is Sanskrit, happiness and distress. And this Chitraketu, he's so happy. Finally, I will be happy in life. I'll get everything I want. Okay. He's dancing in ecstasy. I will have a son. Okay. So he thinks happiness and distress, because everybody causes us happiness and distress, isn't it? I mean, to a certain degree. Everybody I've met practically causes me some distress, and everybody I've met gives me a little bit of happiness. So, anyway, so finally a son pops out. And the son, Harsha Shoka, he even gives him the name Harsha Shoka, What's your name? My name is Happiness Distress. Can you imagine some poor kid walking around in life like happiness, distress? What's your name? Happiness and distress. Anyway. Actually, there was one person who was called Dukhi Krishna Das, like unhappy Krishna Das. Anyway, that's another story. So, so then what happens is that because he has so many wives, the other ones are really envious. So don't try this at home. So anyway, because people are possessive, they want to own you. In most relationships, I'm yours and you're mine. And we're each other's only, we own you. So anyway, I belong to you, you belong to me. No, actually we belong to Krishna. And Krishna belongs to us. But we perverted that, thinking, how can we be someone's property? Did they buy us in the wife's store or the husband's store? Anyway, so what happens? The other wives, quite a few of them, they get really upset because the one wife and the kid is getting all the attention. That's natural. And so they conspire. They think, this is a terrible situation. We can't deal with this anymore. We're not getting any more attention. I mean, I don't even know how he gave attention to them anyway, because he had so many of them. But even with so many, somehow they're getting some attention. And so they conspire, let's kill this kid, everything will go back to normal. So they give the kid a little poison. Not a little, a lot of poison. And the kid kicks the bucket, which is fancy for dying. That's Sanskrit for dying. So anyway, so the kid dies. And everyone's crying. Even the ladies who killed the kid are crying because, they have to make a good show of it. So everybody's crying, woo, like that, like they do in Bengal. Everybody's crying and crying and crying. And then the sage comes back and he brings his good old friend Narada Muni. Because Narada Muni, he likes to preach when it's time for renunciation. That's his business. Anyway, he loves renunciation. So he comes and he says, "What's the problem?" And this king Chitraketu says, "My only son passed away." And then Narada Muni makes the son come back to life. And the son says basically like, "Who are you? I've had so many fathers and so many mothers. Hasta la vista." And so then he goes away, and they're woken up. Oh, there's more to life than just material acquirement. And so he takes shelter of Narada Muni, and Narada Muni sends him out to preach with a bunch of ladies who are not his wives. But anyway, that's another story. By that time, he's learned, you tried enough with his marriage business, didn't you? So, therefore, because you're fried out with it, you're going to be able to deal with ladies in a non-lusty way from now on. So, that's one way of getting cured is like have 10 million wives. But anyway, it's a difficult cure. So he's tried a lot, realizes it ain't going to work. Guru comes. Actually, this is a perfect example. The guru comes. Okay. Oh my God, Mother Irma is watching. So, guru comes, and the guru enlightens him, with some little mystic yoga like that. And then he becomes a great devotee and dedicates his life to preaching Krishna consciousness and gives up the idea that happiness is having a son. He just gives it up. I'm not saying people shouldn't have sons. All I'm saying is he understands that the material requirements are rather futile because the happiness has a beginning and happiness has an end. And then he becomes ecstatic, chanting the Lord's holy name on Sankirtan. Of course, he has a few little problems along the way, which has nothing to do with his search for material enjoyment. He tells a little joke about Lord Shiva and Durga, and as a result, he gets cursed by Durga to become a demon. But that's another story. I guess we could finish the story. Becomes a demon, and Vritrasura, but becomes a Krishna conscious demon. Like if you have to be a demon, it's good to be Krishna conscious. And so he fights with Indra, gets killed by Indra, and goes back to Godhead. Actually, doesn't really get killed. He goes into meditation, goes back to Godhead. So that's a nice story, isn't it? So that story illustrates the point. How many times you got to try? After a while, it's like Draupadi. She was trying her best to hold on to her sari. You know the story? That Draupadi was in the assembly house and they were trying to disrobe her, the Kurus. And her husbands couldn't do anything because of the gambling match. And Grandfather Bhishma didn't do anything because he was just in plain old Maya. And so she tried her best with her material abilities to safeguard her happiness or chastity. And then finally she just went, Krishna, these husbands, what have they done for me? Just like that verse I read the other day that Rukmini said, right? Some of you may remember. What have they done for me? They haven't done anything for me. And they're leaving me defenseless. Krishna! And what did Krishna do? He provided unlimited cloth for her and saved her. So, Krishna's our pati. He's the pati. All right, enough renunciation for all of you tonight. I think Mother Irma dropped off because she was upset. But anyway, Krishna's our... I didn't see her anymore. She just wanted to spy, making sure I was behaving myself tonight. So Krishna's our pati. And for Krishna, we're the priya. You understand? We're dear to Krishna. Anyway. So, renunciation. So who else? No one asked the question, actually. I answered my own question. So, I think Charna has a question. What's the question?
Yes.
Oh, Praneshwar is looking. All right.
Okay, I can wait. I can wait.
Yeah,
Pranaysh.
why don't you ask your question? Praneshwar still has the same question about bad association. So, Jarna, why don't you go first?
I want to ask Hare Krishna to all. I want to ask this Lata Bija she is growing, and we are, of course, uh, for this Lata Bija responsible. But can somebody else do something harmful for this Lata Bija? I wanted to ask, can somebody
Yeah,
else
yes.
stop?
That's actually a good question. If we're not careful, sorry, if we're not careful of our association, then we're going to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and someone else can harm our Bhakti Lata Bish. But we are the ones who let down our guard. Therefore, Dadati Pratigranati Guyam Akiti Prichati. Therefore, we should reveal our minds in confidence to others who are our well wishers, spiritual well wishers. So yes, we have to be careful who we reveal our minds to, who we are intimate friends with, etc. like that. Good question. Okay, who else has a question?
Uh, Gurudev,
Oh, Praneshwara.
yes.
Like
So
you're
my
all
question is,
saved up, ready to get married now. What's the question?
my question is like in the beginning, one have fear with from Krishna, and then how much? What are the activities required with Krishna?
In the beginning, can one be fearful of Krishna? Is that your question?
Yes, in the beginning is like fear. If we do this,
Yeah,
we
I
get
mean,
some
yeah,
reaction.
in the beginning, there's a little healthy fear of Krishna, of God. I mean, I think that's natural. That we're afraid of doing something wrong, the bad karmic reaction. The reason we don't eat meat is because we're afraid of being a dog or something in our next life. But that's not really love of God. That's just obedience out of fear. Love means doing it to please the other person. So what's the rest of the question?
Question is like, what are the actions is required to reach to the level of loving devotional service?
Associate with those who love Krishna, because bhakti is a necessary ingredient. Fear is not bhakti. But out of fear, we may associate with great persons, and then by associating with them, someone is talking in the background. Someone is singing in the background. Someone is singing. It's not a Krishna conscious song. Let's see who's. Oh, I see who it is. Okay, that's good. Anyways, so yes, in the beginning it may be out of fear, but then ultimately, after a while, out of that fear, whatever the impetus is, we begin to associate with great devotees. And then when we begin to associate with great devotees, that love for Krishna rubs off. I remember the first time I came in contact with Prabhupada, I mean, I actually felt love for Krishna just by being in physical proximity to Prabhupada. It just uh, was like that. It's amazing. So, yeah, fear can be an impetus, but it's not necessary, not sufficient, surely, but it can bring one to the point of associating with devotees. Okay, one other question from someone who doesn't ordinarily ask questions.
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Ah,
It's Ratnalekha.
good to see you, Ratnaleka. So good to see you.
Good to see you too, Gurudev. Please accept my humble obeisances.
So my
Uh,
blessing.
Thank you. I had a question regarding in chapter 9, where Narad Muni, when he was a small boy, before taking the remnants of the sages, he first asked for their permission. So I was wondering, sometimes we just take the remnants of great souls and without asking their permission. So is it the etiquette that we should first ask their permission
Yes.
before taking?
No, it's not etiquette. Prabhupada said with or without permission. If you read the purports, Prabhupada said with or without permission.
Okay.
They take the remnants. I mean, I took Prabhupada's remnants and I never asked him, can I do it? Because I didn't want anyone else to know I was taking his remnants. I didn't want to share them with anyone else. If I had asked Prabhupada, people would have discovered that I was stealing all the Mahaprasadam. So beg, borrow, or steal, I took Prabhupada's foot dust. One time, one of Lord Chaitanya's followers upset Lord Chaitanya because he took Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's foot bathing water without his permission. That was in the Gundicha temple. And Lord Chaitanya was upset, but I wouldn't mind getting Lord Chaitanya upset if I could take his foot bathing water. No, don't ask for permission. Just do it. Beg, borrow, steal. Get yourself the mercy. Like that story of Kalidas comes to mind in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, how he would give everybody food to offer to their deities, who are all the devotees in Navadvip area, and he would wait outside their houses until they threw their garbage away, and he would actually dive into their garbage and eat the mango, chew on the mango pits or whatever thing that they had chewed on. So there's an example. He did it without permission of all the Vaishnavas, and he got Lord Chaitanya's mercy. He actually got the permission from Lord Chaitanya to drink the foot bathing water. It's too loud here? Oh, where you are. So here's another question. I'll ask by chat. This is Gopal. What should you do? What should do when you trust the wrong person, people, and your devotion is damaged? How do you get it back? Trust the right people. Know who to avoid. Like that. You can always get it back, but you be careful about hearing offenses. If you hear offenses, it makes it very difficult because it pollutes the mind. I think we have to end now. And Monday here, I'm not sure when it's going to be in New Zealand and Australia, but Monday, or Europe, Monday here is Lord Balaram's Appearance Day. So at the same time on Monday here, which will be basically in the morning on Tuesday in New Zealand, Australia, and Fiji, we're going to be celebrating Lord Balaram's Appearance Day. And we have a program in the evening. We have a class. I'm going to give a short class on Lord Balaram. And then after that, an Abhishek of Lord Balaram. And then I don't know if we're going to have a dance or not. Not me. No dance. Champaka says no dance. So maybe we'll have Gopal dance for you on that date. Okay? That's a deal. So anyway, no dance on that day, but we'll have the RT and everything like that. Everything's going to be online because we're taking a lot of precautions due to the COVID system, the COVID problem here. Actually, it's quite rampant where we are. Quite rampant. North Carolina is one of the real hot spots in the United States. Hopefully that will change so we can travel sometime in the near future. I am praying. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.